Thank you very much. And thanks for the introductions in the chat. Great to have you all online today. Okay, I think we can probably get started as a few more people trickle through. But today's session is all around digital storytelling and how you can showcase your impact through digital narratives. So we will do some welcome and introductions. We'll run through the learning outcomes of today's session. We'll also talk about the impact of storytelling. We'll then touch on ethical storytelling best practices. We also have some examples that we'll be sharing with you today. And we have a little breakout activity for you all. Exciting breakout room activity today, testing our new ethical storytelling AI tool. We then have some next steps, and then, of course, some time for questions at the end. So it's myself and Svetlana delivering the session today. My name is Alice. I'll introduce myself first. You may or may not have met with me before. I am the Program Enablement and Engagement Manager at Lightful. So great to be delivering today's session. I'm very excited. I do less of this, but normally, tracking your kind of progress with the program and your engagement. So it's a real treat to be on today's live session, talking about such an interesting topic, which I know will be a great one. So I'll hand over to Svetlana to introduce herself, and then we can get started.
Thank you, Alice. And welcome everyone. And to those who don't know me yet, my name is Svetlana. I'm one of the digital communications coaches on the Bridge program. And before joining Lightful, I worked in several charities and foundations in Ukraine where I'm based, focusing on developing partnerships, raising funds, and building digital communications. And during that time, I was also working closely with nonprofits across Ukraine as a member of a grant committee. So through that experience, I've seen how powerful storytelling can be. And also, I noticed that ethical storytelling still remains a challenge for many nonprofits. So that's why today's focus on ethical storytelling is so important. And it is because telling impactful stories while respecting the people we feature is really, really important for nonprofits across the world. So I hope that this session helps you create stories that resonate with your audience and uphold ethical values as well. And so let's take a look at our objectives for today's learning. So by the end of this session, you will hopefully understand the importance of being an ethical and responsible storyteller. You will also understand community-centered storytelling and will be able to identify a consent process for storytelling at your organization. We will spend some time talking about informed consent, what that means for you at your organization, and also what that means for your supporters and constituents, so the individuals at the heart of your stories. But before we move on and start, I would like to ask you first, so our first question is, do you currently have a consent process for gathering information or stories from your service users? So do you have like a written form or any other procedure that you use in your organization to get consent from your story heroes? And also, do you feel confident that your stories are ethical? So basically, how confident do you feel about creating such stories and sharing them on your online spaces? So I'll give you some time to answer those two questions. And I see that most of you feel quite confident that your stories are ethical, which is wonderful, but some of you are not sure yet. So I hope that by the end of this session, you will know how to check that your story is ethical and make sure that you have a consent procedure in your organization. And I see that most of you currently do not have a consent process for gathering information and stories from your service users. So also, as I mentioned, I hope that by the end of this session, you will have the important tools and all of the knowledge that you need to implement such process in your organization. So let's move on and kick off by recalling the impact of storytelling for nonprofits like you. As you may remember from our masterclass on storytelling with impact, storytelling is a powerful tool to create an emotional connection between the cause of your nonprofit organization and your audience. So we know that everything starts with the words and the language that you use. But does your organization reflect the experiences of everyone? Words can be a tool for many things. They can be a tool for negative things such as racism and misogyny, but words can also be a tool for change, for inclusiveness, for freedom, and words have the power to prevent categorization of human beings. To stop reducing them to things like gender, sexuality, race, and any other category, stories and words can really enable us to value each community, group, and individual, and amplify the voices of marginalized groups and communities. But in order to achieve that, we must use the words and language consciously. And that's how the power of storytelling really comes into play. But there are different types of storytelling, ethical storytelling and extractive storytelling. So let's take a look at those two types now. So let's start with extractive storytelling. And extractive storytelling is the more negative side of storytelling. Sadly, quite often brands and nonprofits can fall into extractive storytelling without even realizing. Stories are really powerful because they tap into our emotions and our shared values. And it's one thing to read about the social issue on paper, but it's another to hear a person's experience of it and put a face and a name to that story. But it is really important to remember that with the power of storytelling comes a great responsibility. There is a fine line between telling the person's story and using their story, and between empowering someone's voice through storytelling and exploiting them. Increasingly, social impact professionals are paying attention to that fine line by exploring the concept of ethical storytelling. So we have established that storytelling is a really beneficial tool for nonprofits to use in their digital communications. Does that mean that as nonprofit, it is okay to take anyone's story and use it for your own purposes? Of course, no. As nonprofits, we have a duty to care to tell our service users and constituents stories in an ethical way. So what is extractive storytelling? Extractive storytelling is an unethical storytelling practice. It is when a storyteller uses dishonest or manipulative tactics to present a narrative that might be misleading, harmful, or potentially unfair to others. And it can take many forms. It could be telling lies in your storytelling, sharing misinformation, right through to selective reporting, framing, or missing out key information. That then changes the narrative and changes the meaning of someone's story. And when we separate the stories from the true narrators, when we claim them as our own, using them for our own purposes, that is extractive storytelling. A few examples of harmful or extractive storytelling can include unintentionally distorting facts, omitting important information, using inflammatory language, manipulating images and videos, exploiting vulnerable individuals, and potentially promoting harmful stereotypes. It is these practices that can lead to negative consequences, such as inciting fear, spreading false information, causing harm to individuals, groups, or entire communities. It can also undermine public trust in storytelling. As an example of this is from a UK-based charity called Comic Relief, which was recently criticized for reinforcing white savior stereotypes. In their video campaign, we see Ed Sheeran offering to pay for hotel costs for street children in Liberia. It was said by many that this verged on poverty tourism or poverty porn, as the video is focused on Ed Sheeran as the main character, and he is being portrayed as the only one coming and being able to help. So this is one of the examples of extractive storytelling. And now let's take a look at mutually beneficial storytelling. And it really refers to a collaborative approach or process where two or more parties, groups, or individuals work together. This type of storytelling aims to create a positive outcome for the storyteller, so you, and the subjects, so individuals you serve, and your audience, so your supporters. Your job is to tell compelling stories without trivializing people's lives, and to promote a more nuanced narrative about how to achieve lasting change. Mutually beneficial storytelling really involves crafting a narrative that meets the needs and interests of the storyteller, so your organization, and also your subjects, so individuals and communities that you serve and that you are sharing the stories of. It also meets the needs of your audience, your supporters, your donors, and your partners. Ethical storytelling, so this mutually beneficial storytelling, is an approach to creating and sharing narratives that really prioritize honesty, respect, and responsibility towards all individuals and groups involved. It also involves ensuring that the stories being told are accurate, fair, and do not cause any harm to any of the people or communities portrayed. One way that I like to think of ethical, mutually beneficial storytelling is that it's communication without exploitation. So if you think of extracting storytelling as you are taking something away from someone, it is not mutually beneficial. Whereas with ethical storytelling, everyone involved is happy with the process and they also feel involved in that process as well. So as an organization, you benefit, but so does the individual whose story is being told. It is really important to make sure that the individuals or communities whose story is being told are aware of the whole process. They're involved in the whole process and they know how it is being communicated. And they also feel very much involved in that content creation process. These are really important steps to follow, and we will take you through them in more detail shortly. So how does your organization use storytelling? There are a few questions, like I mentioned earlier, that you should always ask yourself when crafting stories and when collecting storytelling content. Firstly, always think about who is the primary character of the story. Is it your organization? Is it an individual or a community? Who is the main character of that story? Second question is how true is the story? Does the story reflect the original intention of the individual or a community member? Does it have the same meaning? I'm sure when you're collecting storytelling materials, maybe if you did an in-person interview with one of your service users or a Zoom interview, you then have lots of content that you need to package and market in a way that is appropriate to share on your social media or an email. But even when you do that, you are making changes to the story every time you make an edit to a sentence, if you cut off some words, if you maybe rearrange some sentences or just pull out a section without the wider context. Even really small editorial edits like this can have a huge impact on the narrative of the story and the meaning of it. So always make sure that when you're getting your storytelling content ready to share, make sure that any edits you make do not take away from the true meaning of the story. Make sure that it does not impact how an individual might be represented and how they might want to come across. Also, you always want to think about what narrative does the story encourage. Does the narrative portray the subject in a respectful manner? You don't want to fall into the trap of creating us and them narrative and representing individuals or communities are disempowered. You want to make sure that you are showing individuals and communities are empowered and really shine a light on their voices. Sadly, the nonprofit sector has a long history of exploiting the stories of the people they serve, particularly people of color, and telling stories through a Western savior narrative. That example I shared before of Ed Sheeran is this in practice. Reflect on the narrative of your story and watch out for stereotypes. Make sure you're not showing your organization as a savior. Until there is a radical shift in social, political, and economic power locally and globally, we must be cautious and tell stories that empower people and highlight the strengths, liberation, and self-determination of our communities. These are just a few things to ask yourself whenever you're thinking about storytelling on your many different digital channels. And now I will hand over to Alice to walk us through some of the best practices of ethical storytelling.
Thank you, Svetlana. So yeah, ethical storytelling really does challenge us to think about the inherent power dynamics that exist between a nonprofit and the person whose story is being told. In most cases, the stories nonprofits looks to share are from people or communities who have been benefited directly from that nonprofit's work. It's not a stretch to say that some might owe their life or livelihood to a nonprofit's services, funding, or support. So when a nonprofit or a foundation provide a platform for someone to share their story or lived experience, it can be empowering, of course, but it can also be difficult for someone to feel comfortable saying no. So what does this mean in terms of our ethics and ethical practice? Is someone consenting to share their story authentically? Or could they feel pressured to consent because of the power dynamics? Falling into that trap of acting as a savior to help others is a real concern that nonprofit communicators need to fight against if we're going to do our work ethically. So let's take a look at some ethical storytelling best practices and informed consent. So there are three main areas to consider in the storytelling process to follow ethical best practices, and these are policies and processes, the substance of your story, and how the story is presented. So let's start with policies and processes. This encompasses how you gather stories, safeguarding and security, and of course, informed consent. Informed consent is all about understanding and representing lived experiences while also being aware of the power dynamics and potential biases that may be present. It ensures that individual fully understands how their story will be used and where their story will be used, and that their privacy or even anonymity is respected if that is something that they want. So whether their story is going to be showcased on social media, in a blog post, or through printed offline materials, it is going to be used, or if it's going to be used in internal emails, you really want that individual to know exactly where that content is being shared and what channels it will be shared on. You also really want them to understand how the story could possibly impact them. If they're going to give their name, they're going to give away personal details, it's helpful to make them aware that it might get some attention and people might try and contact them or might potentially find out what community they're living in. So it's making them aware of how to potentially or how the story might impact them and themselves as individuals. But it's also giving them the option to change these key pieces of information if they wish to do so. This is where their legal rights coincide with your ethical obligations. So at Lightful, here we've created a resource, a media consent form template, which we can share with you. This is a really helpful document to use when you're gathering stories to make sure you have a record of the individual's consent. So we'll share that with you in the chat, and we will also share this with you via email, of course. Interesting, when we shared the poll at the start of the session, some of you didn't have, that consent process in place. So, this form would be a good starting place for that. Thank you for sharing, Sabina. You'll see on the form that you can make it really clear exactly how long the story will be used for, what the storyteller has consented to, whether it's being recorded, interviewed, photographed, and whether that person would like their identity protected in any way. You also want to always make sure that even though they give consent to share their story at a given time, that they also have the option to revoke that consent at any time, should they wish to do so. So it might be that at a later stage, they no longer want to have their story shared for any reason. That is their right to do so. You'll always want to make sure that they can revoke that consent. And it's really important that they know how to do that, who to contact within the organization should they wish for their story to be removed. So this is something that you want to be able to communicate to them at the start of the storytelling process so that they are aware and comfortable that they have that option. Not doing so is actually very harmful to your organization. Not only for your reputation, but also potentially financially. For example, in Europe, sharing someone's personal information, such as their image, without their consent is a breach of data protection regulations. And this results in a huge fine and a potential loss of charitable status for an organization. So huge implications, so definitely worth considering. So storing people's information securely and having a system in place that keeps a record of where their stories have been used will kind of easily allow you to identify if that individual wants to withdraw their consent. You also need to know that the individual is in a position to agree to share their story, to give informed consent. So if you work with younger children, for example, they don't have the capacity to give informed consent. They're too young and they don't know what it means to give that consent, and they don't understand the implications that it can have. So think about who needs to give that consent on their behalf, whether that's a parent or a guardian. Legally, you must involve caretakers in obtaining consent for minors. However, this doesn't mean that the minor shouldn't be involved in the process at all. Older children, teenagers are very much capable of giving you feedback and being involved in those conversations on how they are represented. So you shouldn't discount their involvement completely. You also want to make sure that they understand just in general what the whole storytelling process is and what that goal is. So for example, if you're using the story for a campaign, let them know about the campaign. What are your objectives for the campaign? What are you hoping to achieve? And that would also give them that sense of involvement and make them feel a part of it. It makes them feel much more excited, whilst also adding to the full picture of informed consent. So inclusion is really important. Think of everything through an accessible, people-centered lens. Respect your storyteller's needs when you're gathering their stories, as well as when you're sharing them. When dealing with emotionally heavy content, which a lot of nonprofits do, it's really important to let storytellers know in advance and remind them in the moment that they do not have to share beyond what they are comfortable with, and they can take a break at any point. Giving enough time with ample breaks to rest, providing food, and checking on specific accommodations beforehand are critical to providing a safe and supportive atmosphere. The more accessibility you build into the process, the better everyone's needs will be met. And then a reminder to check in. This is really important. Your relationships with storytellers, they don't end when the story is published. Make sure you take time to thank them for their participation, ask them for feedback on the process, and also keep in contact and celebrate their accomplishments and offer them as much support as possible when needed. So now we come to the substance of your story. So strength-based storytelling is an approach that really focuses on identifying and highlighting the strengths, skills, and positive qualities of individuals, groups, or communities, rather than dwelling on, let's say, their weaknesses, challenges, or problems. So this approach really shifts the narrative from any deficits to assets, from problems to possibilities, and challenges to potentials. So leaving aside what is often referred to as poverty porn, disempowering communities or individuals, but really focusing on strengths, solutions, and a hopeful future. So emphasizing the power of well-being, resilience, and growth. Strength-based storytelling really recognizes that every individual and community has its strengths, resources, and capacities, and that these can all be leveraged to achieve their goals and overcome challenges. In practice, strength-based storytelling involves gathering stories, narratives, insights from groups, and then analyzing those to identify patterns of strengths and success stories. These stories can inspire, motivate, and empower others, as well as inform policies, practices, and interventions that are much more strength-based and effective. So in order to make your storytelling strength-based narratives, to make them strong, you really want to pay attention to the language that you are using in your storytelling. Use terms that empower individuals or communities. For example, it's really unhelpful to call a community poor. They're not just poor, they're economically oppressed. So be really mindful of the language and how you are using certain terms. Even one word or sentence can impact a stereotype of a group of people. So being really mindful of that. When you're communicating a difficult story or a difficult topic, always still focus around hope and that idea of strength. So if you're talking about something difficult, always end your story on a positive note. Think about what the solution is. Think about how we can overcome the challenge. Think about working towards a better future together. Your content should frame the storyteller for the strengths that they bring to your programs and illuminate how your program's reach has extended by the storyteller's participation, rather than framing the storyteller as someone who came in with nothing and was saved by your program. You also want to always think about the individuals in these stories and think about, would they be happy with how they are being portrayed? That's why it's so important to involve them in the storytelling process. And during the editing stage, sending them drafts of media so that they can have their input and they can improve before it's published, going out to the public. This allows the storytellers to make sure that how you've edited down their interviews makes sense to them and represents them in a way that they feel comfortable. And remember that your internal team members are not the sole or final decision makers. So really important to remember as well. So that brings us on to how the story is presented. So having truth and authenticity as two central pillars for your storytelling is key to maintaining ethical storytelling when presenting your stories through different digital channels. It's always so important to make sure that your stories tell the truth. And this seems really simple. Of course, you want to tell the truth. But so often, elements of stories are changed in the storytelling process, and that can change how truthful the story actually is. Edits are essential so that you can package your stories up for the different channels and so that they work on the various social media platforms, or in an email or in a blog. But whenever you do make those edits, make sure you're mindful of the edits that you're making and that you're not changing the narrative, but staying truthful. It's also really helpful to focus on your stories, to focus them on individuals and real individuals and live kind of situations. We know that donors, supporters, and partners are much more likely to engage with real individuals. It helps them to connect with that story and connect with your organization. That being said, if the person sharing the story is at risk in any way from having that story go public, with their consent, you can share the narrative without using their name or any images or footage of them. So this helps keep their authenticity. If you're transparent about this with your audience, letting them know when a name has been changed or withheld to protect someone's safety. Only share details that you have consent for. So let's say that you conduct an interview with a service user and you get lots of great content, lots of information about them. Maybe they share extra information that's not necessarily relevant to the story. Maybe they share information about their age, how many children they have, and where they live. You only need to share the details that are relevant to the story. You don't need to include all of that information within the narrative of the story for it to be powerful and emotive. So check what details they gave consent for, and it might only be aspects for the story that needs to be told. So transparency is key for ethical storytelling and key for building trust with your online communities. I'll now hand back over to Svetlana to run through some case studies that we have to share with you.
Thank you, Alice. So yeah, let's now take a look at some of the examples of stories which may not be ethical, and that's where you come in. So please feel free to share in the chat what are your thoughts on those examples that we will be sharing. And yeah, please feel free to comment, and as we really would like some audience participation here. And let's see our first example. So this is the video from the group Band-Aid, where celebrities released a song to help raise money for the Ebola crisis in West Africa in 2014. So let's watch this video and see what you think. And before we press play, I would like to let you know that the video does contain some upsetting footage, so please feel free to close your screen and return in a couple of minutes if you would prefer that. So let's play this video and let us know what you think about it.
It's Christmas time. There's no need to be afraid. At Christmas time, we let in light and we banish shade. And in
So yeah, let's stop here because there will be just like a song after. So yeah, please feel free in the chat. How do you feel about this video? How it made you feel, and what do you think about it? Is this the example of extractive storytelling or mutually beneficial storytelling, so ethical storytelling? What do you think about this example? I see the first comment from Ellie. It feels similar to the previous example in terms of the white savior complex. Not a fan of going from the upsetting imagery to a glamorous red carpet. Yes, I definitely agree, Ellie. I think this is one of those examples as well of white savior stereotype and really creating this contrast between the problem and those saviors of this organization. Do we have any other thoughts? Also, feel free to unmute yourself and let us know what you think as well. Ceylan shared that it seems insensitive and it is about the celebrities, not those in need. Yes, I definitely agree. Yeah, so I feel that they made it a little bit more about the celebrities than the character of the story, and displayed the struggle more than the positive side and the impact of the strength of this person. So yeah, I definitely agree about that. Do we have any other thoughts, or shall we move to another example? Hope is asking what was happening at the beginning. Image was too small. I think there were people from the charity organization who were rescuing the person, and they brought them to the ambulance, I think. So they didn't have conscious. So it was quite a disturbing video. The first, then it moved to this song with celebrities. So I think that, this contrast was not really portraying the story in a great way. So do you have any other thoughts, any other comments about this video? And Ellie shares that she thinks that the people shown at the start of the film did not provide their informed consent. Yeah, I think that could be true because, I think that they maybe would not like to be portrayed in this way. Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing. And let's move to another example now. So another example is from, so another example is from Tree8, which is an international development non-governmental organization, which focuses on working with people in the Sahel region in Africa to tackle poverty and the effects of climate change by growing trees, improving people's incomes, and restoring and protecting land. So let's watch this video and see what you think. So feel free to share with us in the chat or come up on mute after the video as well.
Ya ton me yong sifu la kelbal. Sanin dinda ton nan puza baraka tara nyod wisko ton pagaba hanna taban nan tuma. Ya bum tar nyod ne ton wisko. Me tir ida nyaaga da tondo. E mi ma mi tir ida. Bala bam nyaaga tondo. Ton ne ton bi wa itsan tuwo doni. Be wana yinere bala ton wawa ton payane tamanu to ya ton singi ton tagadam ti ton bi paraba sangwa na am po ton azin asala ayi so mane ton ti ton pay mbang bala samba sagala yinga yiti neptigim taban tawoto mpasa ba tabiya to
So what do you think about this video? I see the first comment about from Ellie, much more empowering. The subject is the hero with their own solution and the organization is there to provide support. Yeah, I agree. This is a great comment. So yeah, I think that it is important that the story comes from Alizada herself and is about her path first. And it is not about the organization who is the main character of the story. It is about it is about Alizada, but the organization is still there to support. And yeah, there is a nice call to action in the end, asking to donate to support more people like Alizada in their communities. Do we have any other comments? Anything else you would like to share about this example? How this made you feel? I see a comment from Hope. This video has been shown in many of your courses as a good example. Yeah, I think that is a really great example for many things. And yeah, as I mentioned, having a call to action in the end and empowering a person, empowering the main character and showing the story from their point of view. I think this is really, really great example because it is really powerful and it shows some challenges, but it also shows the solution, which is really great. So yeah, I think that is a great example. Do we have any other comments about this video? So how did it make you feel? And do you think this person has given their consent to share this story? No worries if not. We can then go to our next example. So I will hand back to Alice for that.
Thank you very much. So yes, here on the screen, you have an Instagram post as an example from World Food Programme. And this is an example of storytelling delivered through an image and a caption. And it reads, conflict-driven hunger in the DRC is escalating. Around 23.4 million people, nearly a quarter of the population, are facing crisis levels of hunger or worse. Many endure poor, cramped conditions with little to no access to food, health services, and education. Asifwe is a 24-year-old mother that has been displaced for the past 5 months. She endured a long journey to reach a camp on Goma's outskirts. Life in the camp is a daily struggle, especially to meet basic needs like food and shelter. Asifwe is deeply worried about the health of her daughter, Charlene, and her niece. Both children are struggling in the harsh camp conditions, and Charlene is suffering from severe malnutrition, requiring urgent treatment at a health clinic. WFP's assistance in DRC has been a lifeline, preventing a major humanitarian disaster. However, a new wave of displacement and increased fighting, WFP urgently needs more funds to continue its critical support. So again, please feel free to share your initial thoughts on that Instagram post example. You know, thinking about what we've discussed earlier on in the session. What has this story focused on? Has it focused on, you know, too much on the challenges that are still there and still exist, but less so on the solution? Again, feel free if you do want to come off mute or in the chat. Thank you very much, Ali. Problem focused, not strength focused. Yeah, a very different tone to the way that the story is being told. Compared to the case study shared before, Alizita's story, which had that kind of sense of hope, that sense of coming together, and the impact that could be made. Would you all agree with Ali? Does anybody else have a different opinion? No problem if not. But yeah, just some different examples there that we kind of highlight the different. Thank you, Brina. You agree with Ali, and that's exactly kind of we've shared the case studies that touch on the different points that we've talked about in this workshop. So yeah, glad you agree, and that's definitely kind of our take on it as well. So yeah, moving on, we'll move on, also in the interest of time. But yeah, I mean, stories have the power to bring people together and to inspire change. So they really have the power to change behavior through patterns, leading to more positive outcomes for your local community, but also on a global scale as well. Storytelling goes beyond creating awareness. It helps create empathy, and we know that empathy leads to action. So whether that action is making a donation or attending an event, or whether that action is actually changing behaviors, storytelling has a huge part in both of those and has huge potential for promoting social justice and equity in communities at a scale as well. And, you know, in addition to this, ethical storytelling also encourages the use of storytelling as a tool for positive social change, promoting understanding and empathy and inclusivity. It's also giving a voice to those who are marginalized in society. Ultimately, you know, ethical storytelling really seeks to create a more just and equitable world and foster that positive change. So it's much more than just showcasing stories, but about showcasing behaviors and changing attitudes. There's so much potential with storytelling. So hopefully after today's session, you can recognize that and also recognize the responsibility that comes with it, understanding how to be ethical and responsible when gathering that information, sharing the information, and sharing those stories. All of these best practices apply to the stories of anybody that you are sharing, you know, not just your service users and supporters, but also those stories of your board members, your trustees, funders, volunteers. So whoever the story centers around, they deserve to have their story shared following these ethical principles. So that brings us on to Lightful's new digital tool. So to help you with your ethical storytelling here at Lightful, we have developed a tool that uses artificial intelligence to review your draft storytelling content and it will flag ethical considerations and suggest best practices. So we'll have some time for you to have a look in your breakout room activity, although we're a little bit tight for time, but we'll also, be sharing this all with you in the follow-up email. We showed you last week our brand new storytelling checklist, which is part of the digital toolkit that you have exclusive access to. But this tool is slightly different in that it focuses on that ethical side of your storytelling. So this tool will give you feedback on the copy of your story. So again, whether that copy is a blog post, if it's a social media post, your email copy, campaign material, video content, video transcripts, it then uses artificial intelligence to it reviews the content, and then it will rate your content on key ethical storytelling criteria. And that criteria is authenticity, dignity, empowerment, transparency, context, and consent. Yes. Okay. Shall I do a demo? Quick demo. Let me share my screen. Make sure I share the right screen. It's this one. Okie doke. Let me make this bigger. Can you all see the Lightful social platform? Amazing. So I'll be nice and quick with this. It's very self-intuitive. It's very easy to use. But as you'll see here on the sidebar, this little lightning bolt sign is our Lumi sign for our Lumi, our AI built tool at Lightful. So you'll click here, and this is the ethical storytelling tool that I had just briefly discussed. So these are previous draft stories that the team have created, but I'll show you the different feedback that you get. So you'll click start a new story here, and it will bring you through to this draft box here. And this is the draft box that I was saying can be any of, the content that you'll be sharing online, whether it's email, a blog post, anything like that. So you can free text or you can copy and paste. In this instance, I will copy and paste some information about an organization actually that I volunteer with in the UK here in London. So once you copy that text in this example, they are looking to recruit some more volunteers for a campaign that they run every year, and it's collecting coats, kind of unworn coats, and distributing them to various homeless shelters around the UK. So copy and pasted that story into this text box here. And underneath, you have the option to add the purpose of the story. So in this instance, they want to gain more volunteers. It may be to raise, X amount. It can be, many different types of purpose for the content that you're sharing. And all you need to do is click this little button here, get AI feedback. We'll give it a moment to let Lumi do its thing. You can see it's thinking here. Okay, perfect. So as you see here, it will give you some feedback on those key areas that I mentioned earlier. So authenticity, dignity, empowerment, transparency, context. And then it will actually provide some specific examples. So it will pull out real, text from examples from the text that I have input. And it will make some suggested improvements for you to think about. It's very suggestive. So authenticity in my text, I had said up to 20,000 warm coats. One of the suggested improvements for the authenticity principle is, could this number be supported with data, or are there any reports from previous years? So it kind of makes these suggestions of ways that you can improve your ethical storytelling. And of course, we've mentioned this quite a lot through today's workshop, the consent piece. So in this instance, there was no kind of individuals mentioned or named, but if there were, it would kind of it would mention those in this little box down here. I'll scroll back up quickly. That's the ethics. And if you remember correctly here, the purpose of this piece of text was to gain more volunteers. So it will also provide some feedback on that and ensure that the story and the purpose are aligned. So again, it will analyze the pieces of text that I have input, and then it will also make some suggestions. So suggestions that you can discuss with your team and that you can ensure you've kind of incorporated all of the different factors that we've spoken about in today's session. So whilst that's a super quick demo, it's a very, very new tool for Lightful, and we are delighted to share it with you or for you to use. Thank you, Sabina, for sharing that link in the chat. Definitely worth you all having a play around with that tool and letting us know your feedback. It's really welcomed. So yeah, hopefully you're as excited by that tool as we are. I don't know, in the interest of time, do we have time for a breakout room? Will I hand back to you, Svetlana?
Yeah, maybe quickly we can put you into breakout rooms to test this tool. So if you have any stories that you would like to test, we will open the rooms right now. So you will have the invitation to your breakout rooms. So this breakout room will be quite short, just conscious of time, but we will wait for you here in 5 minutes. So please take a look at the ethical storytelling tool, and we have shared in the link with you in the chat. So please feel free to paste your stories there and see the feedback from our AI tool. So we will wait for you here in 5 minutes. So welcome back from your breakout room activity, and apologies that we had to cut your conversation short, but I hope that you had a chance to quickly try our new tool and try to test your stories on those principles that Alice has mentioned. So please feel free to share your feedback about the tool with us. We would love to know how you found it, whether you found it useful. So please feel free to do that in the chat or later with us by emailing support@lightful.com. As we have launched some of our final polls, let me just quickly walk us through some of our next steps after today's session. So firstly, I would like to remind you to please take a few moments to complete your midpoint tracker. And this is a crucial step as we reach the halfway point of the program. By sharing your feedback, you are really helping us ensure that the rest of the program meets your needs and maximizes your learning experience. So your input really allows us to improve it for both you and future participants. So please take this time. It is really greatly appreciated. So you can find the form on the slide now, and Sabina has just shared the link with you in the chat as well. And also, one important aspect of ethical storytelling is ensuring that the people we feature in our stories are fully informed and have the given consent to share their experiences. So we want to make sure that their voices are represented in empowering and respectful way. So to help with this, we have developed a consent process template that you can integrate into your consent gathering efforts. So we have shared this in the chat with you now as well. And as we mentioned, you can also continue exploring our storytelling with ethical impact tool designed to help you create powerful, respectful stories that elevate the people you work with. So please feel free to try that in your free time and let us know what you think about it. And we also encourage you to identify some storytelling opportunities for your organization and use the storytelling checklist that we will share in the chat as well. Also, you can start using a consent form that we have shared with you, integrated into your consent gathering process. And you can also learn more about Lightful storytelling with ethical impact tool by completing our micro-learning course and review your stories using the tool. And of course, we always invite you to book a digital coaching call to speak to the Bridge team to identify storytelling opportunities and get feedback on your stories from our team. And finally, I want to remind you that you can join our community of Bridge participants on Facebook, on WhatsApp. So lots of you are already in our WhatsApp group, but if you haven't joined yet, you can do so by following the links in the chat and by following the QR codes on this slide. And I know we are a little over time, so do you have any questions for us? And we have launched the final poll asking you how useful did you find this session? So I see some votes coming through, which is really nice. Thank you very much. So as we are wrapping up, do you have any other questions to us today? If not, that's okay. And as you know, we can always find us at our email, and you know how to book your one-to-ones by following the links that we have shared. So feel free to ask any questions after the session and book a session with our team to talk more about your stories and ethical storytelling approach in your organization. So thank you very much for joining us today. It was really nice to see you all and catch up, and we hope to see you at our next session soon. Thank you. Have a nice day.